Welcome to Source Documentation MLA Style. I'm Beth Harger, and I will be your guide to MLA Style. If you haven't already, I strongly urge you to purchase a copy of the 8th edition of the official MLA Handbook, which was released in April 2016. This handbook contains the most current guidelines for documenting sources in MLA style. In it, you will find more details and answers to special case source documentation. For this presentation, we are sticking to the basics. First of all, why do it? Source documentation is a matter of integrity, trust, and empowerment. It demonstrates personal and professional integrity. It allows for fact and credibility checking, and shared resources enable others to follow the study of a particular topic or extend the research. Basically, when we're looking at source documentation, we're also thinking prevention of plagiarism. And this quote says it real well. We read words, not minds. So think of plagiarism not as an intended act, but as a perceived one. So first, let me define plagiarism. I'm always amazed at the number of students that are confused by this concept. They seem to understand the basic concept of deliberate plagiarism, and infractions are usually due to negligence or just feeling too busy or rushed to properly document sources. Still, the importance of giving proper and correct credit must be stressed. Whether deliberate or accidental, in either case it is unethical and constitutes a serious infraction of academic policy. So all quoted material must include an in-text citation, and any information, idea, or created work, including anything you include as supporting evidence, must have a citation, whether you quote it or paraphrase it. So as I tell my students, this is your crowd of witnesses helping back up your statements and claims. You must give credit where credit is due. Now, students are often confused about what is or is not common knowledge, which you do not need to cite. I once had a student who thought anything that appeared in any newspaper was common knowledge. Not true. What confused this student was the definition of common knowledge. Since the internet has contributed to ideas and information being broadly known or available from multiple sources, which is part of the definition of common knowledge. But there's also the other part, which includes that it must be widely accepted by most people, which the items on this list typically are. So you've got place names, historical events, founding documents, scientific findings and theories, basic biographies of well-known famous people, frequently spoken proverbs, sayings, or cliches, and dictionary definitions. Encyclopedia references can also be included on this list because that's where you will find a lot of this common knowledge information. So, as you're working to create this paper, from start to finish, you need to build a working bibliography. Source documentation is built from that information collected from source materials gathered during the research phase. In conjunction with evaluation of credible sources, the documentation information provides the who, what, how, where, and when as related to the materials used. In today's world, forms of communication proliferate, and publications migrate readily from one medium to another. It is for this reason that the 8th edition based formatting guidelines on simple traits shared by most works. So we're looking at why build this working bibliography. It's an efficiency factor. Keeping careful notes serves a purpose beyond just giving credit where credit is due. When that due date is imminent, keeping that complete and correct bibliography helps avoid having to search a second time for that perfect quote that you remember reading. It can also save time when compiling your Works Cited list. If you format correctly as you go, all you need to do is copy and paste that listing into your document. Just remember to double check that the corresponding in-text citations are included as well. And then it empowers critical thinking and evaluation skills. Beyond simply giving proper credit, documenting sources helps you evaluate what you believe about a subject and why. Most people quickly discover that both sides of an issue can be found to support whichever side you decide to support. So, mature evaluation of sources, including the illustrious industry experts, is key to helping you decide what to believe and what you want to write. Ultimately, the credibility of a source reflects on the writer who uses them to support their own position. So as I tell my students, you are known by the company you keep and whose words you share. So select those sources carefully. These are a few different options to help you build that working bibliography. Now, some are completely online. There's one there that it's a self-contained software that you use on your computer. Of course, MS Word has a function within that software as well. So these are all different types to try out. Each has different features that appeal to different people. There are also citation generator tools, including the one found in MS Word. These others are found online, and they're top choices for many because each offers the option to format MLA as well as other format styles. They each offer different free or fee-based options, and they're kind of self-intuitive. They have a name of an item, piece of information, and a box to put it in, and it just kind of walks you through the process. I do caution everyone when using these tools to be sure to proofread the listing to ensure that ultimate information is complete and the formatting is compliant according to the most up-to-date standards. Basically, the purpose of source documentation is it's a roadmap leading to the original source while interrupting the reader's engagement with text as little as possible. So here we have an example. It begins with that Works Cited listing found on the Works Cited page. So only sources used in the content of the paper can be used on this list. And this means there is a corresponding in-text citation that indicates what information came from what source. And likewise, if you see an in-text citation, that means that there's a corresponding complete listing to be found on the Works Cited page. And as a reminder, incomplete or incorrect citations or listings are considered a form of plagiarism. Now, source documentation is kind of like a triangle, which is the strongest shape. So it has traits shared by most works in those three pieces of information. It starts with the author, the person or organization who created the work, has the source title, which is part of an independent work such as article, blog, email, Twitter, interview, work of art, could be a song, audio or video recording, movies, etc. Then you have the container, which is the name of an independent work such as a book, periodical, or website. And after that, included in that container is all the visible publication information. So that independent work that we used to call by a specific name with a specific rule on how to cite it or list it, the book, the journal, the website, that is now called a container to reflect that while the publishing medium may change and have different names, the principles behind the documentation format is the same. So a work in a new medium can thus be documented without new instructions. You don't have to wait around for MLA to decide how it's going to be formatted. Here is the beginning of the template that they have provided. The first piece of information is the author and source title. The author's name is ordered by last name, first name. If there are multiple authors, additional authors are then listed first name, last name. If there are over 3 authors, you list the first one, last name, first name, and then the words et al. The source title is a piece of a larger work. It's enclosed in quotation marks and not italicized. Capitalization is as it was published, typically headline style, but not always. Both author and source title end with a period. And of course, you have the source title if it is available. If it's a book, it's a container. And then we move to the next level of information. The container is the independent work that holds the source title within it. There can be multiple nested containers, which we'll get to in a moment. The name of the container, which can be a book, or as in this case, a peer-reviewed journal, is italicized. Each piece of information ends with a comma as shown until the publication date or location, whichever is the last piece, and that ends with a period. So then we've got other contributors. You include these only if they're important to the purpose of your research or paper. If it's not important, they can be left out. Contributors are indicated by phrases like the ones listed here: adapted by, directed by, edited by, illustrated by, narrated by, performed by, translated by. But again, they're only included if they're important for your paper. If the source indicates it's a version of a work released in more than one form, you must identify the version in your entry. Books are commonly issued in versions called editions. Performances can be unabridged version or director's cut. Periodicals often have a volume number. Number refers to the issue number. It can be in conjunction with a journal's volume number or as a standalone number. In addition, like comic books and episodes of a television series, those typically are numbered in sequence. So this is where you would put that information. Publisher is the organization primarily responsible for producing the source or making it available to the public. For a book, this is still the company that printed it. A movie might be published by, say, 20th Century Fox, for example. A website might be sponsored by any number of organizations to include educational institutions, libraries, nonprofit organizations such as the American Red Cross. A blog network such as the Scientific American Blogs, it might be considered the publisher of the blogs that it hosts. You include the publication date as it's given by the source. Here we've got month and year. Some journals have a day, so you would have day, month, year in that military or European format. For web access sources, use the date provided for the source material, the article. Do not use the copyright date found at the bottom of the website page. That is only used if you are citing the web project as a whole. So keep that in mind. That copyright date down at the bottom does not mean that's when that article was published. If there is no date given for that specific article, then you use N period, D period for no date. Now, the location would be the page range for a source that's part of an independent work, such as an article or a journal, like we've got here, page 193 to 200. That's where you will find this article by Barron in that journal. A song or a video might be located on a specific disc number. An archived object might have a number. For a live performance, you would list the physical location where you attended the event. A web page will have a specific URL. Now, as MLA's new 8th edition of their handbook states on page 48, we recommend the inclusion of URLs in the Works Cited list. Even though the URL can change, it still provides information about where the work was once found. If provided, permalinks are stable URLs, which a publisher promises not to change. Now, the only other alternative to a URL, that specific URL for that specific source, that alternative would be a DOI, or Digital Object Identifier. Most databases include this number with the source article itself. So the DOI system is particularly used for electronic documents such as a journal article. Like an ISBN number, the DOI remains fixed over the lifetime of the document, whereas the site it was accessed through may change. So if you're accessing a database, look for that DOI number. The DOI should definitely be used instead of a specific URL for that database, because especially if you're using a database that has a required password login. Because, of course, in general, most readers won't be able to log in and use that URL, but they can find it in whatever database they are using that DOI number. So using this template, we can take the information in the order to create a listing for your Works Cited page. And that's where we have the example here for Naomi Barron. You use the information that you have. You don't have to fill in each level, each number. Now, I mentioned that we could have nested containers, and this is an example of that. You could have, say, a digitized print article listed in a database. It could be an ebook. It can be an entire book digitized, such as we have here, The Complete Works of Edgar Allan Poe. Students are quickly learning that doing their research online meets their need for time and location flexibility. And even if they go to a physical site, they are often logged onto a computer and accessing a larger database. So this is what that listing would look like, taking those nested containers and putting it into a Works Cited listing. Now, the 8th edition of the MLA Handbook also specifies formatting for citing scripture. The listing begins with the title of the edition. Editors are included as another contributor, edited by. So if you have a study Bible, that's where that contributor would come in. Page numbers are not used in lieu of naming the book, chapter number, and verse number. So the first time you quote a scripture, include the translation used. And then again, if you switch translations, you must list it. Or if you're switching back and forth. For ease of documentation, I advise students to cite a printed edition of the translation used. Many of us are using an online Bible and looking up the verses that way, but if you specifically cite that online version, it has a separate URL specific to that verse, and you will have to list each verse separately. By doing the print version, it gives you one listing that covers everything. Just make sure you're using the same edition and you're citing a printed edition, such as the English Standard Version or the King James Version, whichever you are using. If the quote uses the actual study notes provided by an editor versus the scripture itself, then be sure that you give that editor credit in the content text, maybe by way of an introduction or according to, something like that. So make sure you still give proper credit. Now, in-text citations are based on the bibliographical listing. Think of it like a label leading you to an address. That in-text citation must match the first piece of information for the corresponding listing. This would be the author's last name or the source title if no specific person is identified as the author. Now, the author's name may appear in the text itself or abbreviated before the page number in the parentheses of the in-text citation, one of two ways. Paragraph numbers are only included if the source provides it. For time-based media, such as audio or video recordings, cite the relevant time or range of times. Now, online, you may or may not have page or paragraph numbers. If it's peer-reviewed, it's probably in a journal. Even if it's digitized, it will have a page number, and make sure you're citing that page number, not that it's the page one of the online PDF. That doesn't count. You use the page number as it would appear in the journal, and that's how you would make sure you keep your pages straight. So, on that note, I would like to thank you for your time and have a great day.